So, Jesus turning water to wine. One of my absolute all-time favorite gospel stories. So, it comes up pretty regularly, and you always have to try to think about like what's new in the story this time around. And I went off to look for the picture to go on the front of our bulletin, not the one that's there now. I Googled turning water into wine, and something really weird came up that I was like not so sure about. It was one of those very crisp, beautiful photographic images. It had a completely white background, beautiful glass, see-through wine glass water, and then somebody was dripping like food coloring or wine maybe into it. It's just sort of, they've captured it sort of spiraling down into the water. And I don't know, it sort of creeped me out because I'm thinking to myself, first of all, it's a little bit like blood, which is fine. I mean, we do communion all the time. The symbolism is there. But I don't think I want to understand that piece of it quite so viscerally. I'm not, I guess, that wrapped up in the mechanics of the process of how the water became wine. And so then that got me thinking, what's really being changed here in this story? I mean, I have to say, in my heart of hearts, I have no doubt that Jesus can change material matter in whatever way Jesus wanted. And definitely to take something sort of regular and everyday and make it into something really, really super special. Like that, Jesus does that all the time, right? But it turns out I'm most interested in what's happening with the people and what's changing with them. So in this story today, we have a crisis. And it's a social crisis. We don't have enough wine. Oh no. Because if you think about it, Cana is just, it's a little tiny town. It's a village, more or less, in Jesus' time. And Jesus is there, Jesus' mother there, all the disciples are there. Probably the entire town is at this wedding, right? And one of my commentators I listened to this week pointed out that if they run out of wine, then for all time immemorial, that wedding will be remembered as the wedding where they ran out of wine. Because that's the way small towns work, right? We don't have enough. That was the problem that they thought they faced. And it was a big, oh no, kind of moment. But Mary was there. And Mary knows something that nobody else in the room knows, which is that they have something huge. They have Jesus with them. And she's certain that that in and of itself is enough. Now I want to remind you that this is the Gospel of John. So in the Gospel of John, there are no birth narratives. So the Magi have not seen Jesus. The shepherds haven't been told by the angels. And I don't think I had pieced this together, but John, we don't get that baptism scene in the specific details. So that we haven't had the heavens opening up and God's voice going, "This is my son, everyone listen to him," right? We don't have that in the Gospel of John. So this story is in fact in John's Gospel the unveiling, the moment, the first sign that Jesus is more than just a regular old person. And it's funny to me, as a mom especially, that Mary's the one that kind of like pushes him on stage. And you kind of hear it in there. Jesus has one of those little wobbles. Has anyone here ever done that thing to their kid? They're like, "Okay, Jimmy, you play piano for all of our friends that are gathered here." And little Jimmy's like, I do not want to do that. I do not feel good enough to do that, etc., etc., etc. But Jesus, Mary gives Jesus the mom look. Okay, all right. He doesn't think he's ready. But he is, and Mary knows it. So Jesus is like, all right. And he looks around the room, and he says, what do we have to work with here? And he sees 6 clay jars. Now, I don't know if you took on, because this is like a really important detail, 30 gallons in each of those clay jars. That means
That's heavy.
that's a lot.
It's very heavy.
They're big.
Yeah, they're really big, and I'm told that that's something like 1,000 bottles worth of wine that's going to come out of those 6 clay jars. It's a lot. And the other thing that Jesus has is water, and that's, there's no fanfare beyond that. Just, do what I say, put the water in, take it to the store, yeah, it's wine. And not just any wine, the best wine. They save the best till last. And the steward, he's amazed. Because he thought, the usual way that weddings work is you start with the good stuff, and then, you kind of slow it down. You can get away with serving the not so good stuff, because by that point, who knows? They can't tell. They're all just happy and in their cups, right? So you can see what happened here. The people were transformed by this miracle. They thought they did not have enough. They thought this was a crisis. But it turned out that because Jesus was with them and they followed what Jesus told them to do, and they worked with exactly what they had, they not only had enough, but they had more than enough. In fact, they thought the best had happened and they were finished. Instead, the best was yet to come. Kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. They were making do what they had, and through them, Jesus' glory was being revealed. That's the Epiphany here. But it's an epiphany that happens about Jesus and about this community that was gathered to celebrate love and life and future and family and all that kind of stuff. So, that's why I love this story. Theologian Rolf Jacobson has suggested that one of the themes of John's gospel throughout is abundance. And we've talked about this a little bit before. But he made an interesting observation this week that I really got to kind of chew on, which is that in the Gospel of John, this idea of abundance in Jesus, it's not just about volume. I mean, definitely John uses lots of hyperbole. I mean, 1,000 bottles of wine, that's hyperbole. And so volume helps highlight this abundance in Jesus, this enoughness. But it's about other things too. It's about the surprise of it, about the joy, about the wonder, about this kind of a movement and improvement from this sense that we don't have a way forward to there is this life-giving, beautiful, amazing way forward if we just look around to what God has given us here. Start from where you are, and whew, amazing things will happen in God if you follow Jesus' word. So in October, a team of us, Jane and Donna and Lee and I, went to that training for leaders of small congregations. I mean, we've talked about this before. It was pretty cool. But when we got there, there were, I think, 10 or 11 congregations total who had come from all over the United States. And what we discovered when we got there were all these stories of how these little places who, had spent years hearing, you're not enough. You don't have enough people, you don't have enough money, you don't have enough, whatever. They've been told only about their deficits, and they could only think about their deficits. Discovered, or were in the process of discovering, everything that God had given them. And if they were faithful in this abundance, then they were amazing places where God's love shined forth. Stories of God turning water into wine all over the place. The one that really sticks in my head, there was one church that was returning. They had been part of the first cohort 3 or 4 years ago. And at that time, they were one of those big Gothic churches built in Philadelphia, which, the East Coast is full of these gorgeous churches that were packed out in the late 19th and early 20th century. Only the neighborhoods had changed. And they weren't particularly filled with your traditional Episcopalians anymore. They all moved out to the suburbs, right? And so this beautiful Gothic church was full of, I don't know, maybe like 10, 12 people on a Sunday.
Wow.
They were struggling. They were struggling a lot because, you know, that's a big building to have to maintain. And they didn't know what to do about it. But they went to this conference and they spent some time thinking about who they were, where they were, and what assets they had, and what Jesus might be calling them into. And what their takeaway was, they looked around, they just opened their door, and they were like, we are surrounded by a Latino community now. This is where we live. This is who we are. This is who God has given us to be in relationship with. And so they decided to open up their doors and have a Spanish language service. And you know why they were back at that conference? Because now their Spanish language service has like 150 people on a Sunday.
Oh, wow.
And the people who used to sit in those pews just kind of like, you know, and they probably sat all spaced out and whatever, and now packed in. They've started for a while having an English service and a Spanish service, but they've decided we're going to learn Spanish and we're just going to have one service altogether. And so they were there to try to figure out now what's next for them. What's their next steps? So I thought that was a pretty cool story. And there were also 3 or 4 churches from very rural towns up in the Olympic Peninsula who they'd been small for a long time, and they had at a certain point not had been able to support clergy people anymore, and they had banded together and worked out, okay, one of us will get trained to do the like running of a church stuff that priests usually do. And one of us will get trained to do run pastoral teams, to do that part that we're church. And one of us will get trained to run the liturgy. And they had done this thing, it was called Total Common Ministry. And they've been doing this for a while and working together and sharing. It was a pretty interesting story. And now that generation of people was ready to retire, and they were there to discern, like, who are we now? And what's our next steps, and who's going to step into what roles so that we can now take our next step into our story. So that was, I just like all these stories about water to wine that we discovered there. And we had to share our own story. And so we brought an egg carton. And our team, you know, we put that out there. You're supposed to bring something that tells a story about God at work in your congregation. And that one came up really easily for us. Because, I mean, we've been here at St. Phil's collecting egg cartons for a really long time. And the eggs kind of come and go. I know at some point they were donated, and then we started getting them from Second Harvest, and now we're funding them. And actually for 2025, we may have to come up with a new plan because bird flu, right? But it's always been a part of, like, we figure out how to be able to give the people who come to us on Thursday night for Pip's Pantry what they need to feed their families. And we look at ourselves and figure that out, right? And that's a story of water into wine. And what I loved about this, all these stories was, I think every last one of us, when we showed up together, discovered that none of us are second-rate wine, right? We are not the wine that just gets left for after everybody's drunk. Nope, we're the best wine that's out there. That's who we are, and that's who God has called us to be. And in Jesus Christ, if we have Jesus with us and we're trying to follow Jesus' word, then we can do that. And we were taught that there's a word for this is called asset-based mindset. So we're going to practice asset-based mindset when we gather together for our annual ministry review after church. I'm sure some of you are like, yeah, do we do this every year? Because you can remember that this is not the annual meeting. That's in a couple of weeks. This is a different thing. And normally, the vestry would just sort of like have a Saturday retreat. And we would sit here all day, and we would talk about the church and figure out, like, what did we do this year? And what do we want to learn from it, and all that kind of stuff. Only this year we did something different. We had a third of our vestry meetings were community meetings, and we gathered in leadership together, those community building meetings. So we figured it made sense to do our review all together. And we're gonna do it by doing this asset-based mindset. What things are memorable for this year? Like what's the new wine from 2024 that we discovered here? And how have we started from who we are and who Jesus calls us to be, and responded to that call in ways that just, made wine out of all of these pieces of who we are and the gifts that we have. So we'll get a chance to do that after church. I hope you're planning to stay. But I kind of thought it would be nice to do a little warm up before that, to kind of get the juices flowing. So is there anyone here who knows the song by Johnny Cash called "He Turned the Water into Wine"? You've heard it. He turned the water into wine. He turned the water into wine. In that little Cana town, the word went all around that he turned the water into wine. Pretty easy, right? So you know what's interesting about this song? I Googled it, came up on YouTube. He introduced that song by performing it at San Quentin Prison. Now, if ever there's a place where you're looking at a room full of people who have been told, you're not good enough, you're not enough, you don't have what it takes to follow Jesus, that's the place, right? And yet he's saying in Jesus, you have what it takes to look around you and listen to your heart about what Jesus calls you into also. And you can see that at performance on YouTube. It's actually quite beautiful. So I thought that we would try to think about some of the ways that we have been called to witness water into wine here at St. Philip's. What are some things that happened in 2024 where water became wine for us? Ministries, events.
When we went to the Santa Cruz Pride Parade, the impact that we made on the people there.
Yes.
That was pretty amazing.
Yes.
Frankly.
Yeah. All right. That came up at 8 o'clock too. It's hard to turn that into a line of the song, but let me try. So you gotta sing with me, because this is gonna sound sort of like a little funny, but he had us marching Pride Parade. He had us marching Pride Parade. In little St. Philip's town, the word went all around. He had us marching Pride Parade. All right, another thing that you can think of from 2024. Online congregation, feel free to put your hand up too. You're part of this. Marcus.
I'm not sure if it's 24, but it's when the Associated Faith guy came in and gave his talk and talked us to being small but mighty. I think that was.
I think that was. I feel like he came in the winter. But yeah, that was a pretty powerful moment, because I don't think we realize the impact of having the shelter with us 2 months out of the year has on the people in the shelter. Okay, how do I make a song out of that? How about we welcome the shelter through our doors? We welcome the shelter through our doors. In little St. Philip's town, the word went all around. We welcome shelter through our doors. Trish, you have your hand up.
Yeah, well, we provided a space for raw actors and musicians to get together and put on the most wonderful play at the theater that entertained all the community and brought a lovely message to us all.
Frog and Toad, right?
Yes, And there's a little anecdote there. My grandson was sitting on my lap and Frog and Toad hugged for the first time. And my little grandson, you don't know him that well, but turned to me and said, Nana, I want to hug them too.
Oh.
So that all started here.
How are we going to do this?
Sorry.
How about he had the stories of love start here. Does that work?
Sure.
He had the stories of love start here. He had the stories of love start here. In little St. Philip's town, the word went all around. He had the stories of love start here. Did I see another hand somewhere?
Well, I can say, because I did this yesterday, that opening the church to blood donating space is really big.
Yes.
I think a lot of people come and
50 people came yesterday to give blood, I think. Does that sound about right?
nice.
And
There were certainly that many, did you say booked in?
yeah, 50, I think.
50.
Yeah, that's what Barbara said this morning. And the other thing that's kind of cool about that is, like, we were kind of looking at that and going, are we able to do this anymore? I mean, we're not really furniture movers anymore. And then God gave us the Scouts,
Yes.
who are dying for ways to serve. And that's been a really lovely partnership this year.
And the nurse told me that one bag of blood donated can save 3 lives. One bag.
Oh, wow.
So that was like, wow, okay.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How do we put that in a song?
Something about the church as a space to give life.
Blood into life.
Blood into
Yeah,
life.
okay.
Something
He
like
helped
that.
us.
Turn blood into
life.
Yeah, okay. He helped us turn blood into life. He had us turn blood into life. In little St. Philip's town, the word went all around that he had us turn blood into life. All right, I think we have time for one more, at least. Last one? Anyone? I'm looking online. I'm looking around. Any of the things from 2024? I have one. We had a choir.
That's right. That's right. That was
An
great.
amazing choir. We were like 20 people who came for the first one and like 10 for the second. We had music for our 2 biggest Christmas services because of that choir. He had us join together to sing. He had us join together to sing. In little St. Philip's town, the word went all around that he had us join together to sing. He turned the water into wine. He turned the water into wine. In little St. Philip's town, the word went all around. He turned the water into wine.